Hello, hello. Hey, everyone. Our guest today has over 40 years' experience in the area of elite performance through visual training, having worked with the likes of NASA, the U.S. Olympic shooting team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, New England Patriots, Boston Bruins, and jet fighter pilots, as well as those with autism, PTSD, and traumatic brain injury. As president of the Elite Performance and Learning Center, he's pioneered the area and has developed zone-inducing technology. Give it up for my friend, Dr. Joseph Trachtman.
My name is Brian Shinborn. I'm an explorer of people, places, and culture. In my travels, spanning over 20 countries across 4 continents, I've had the pleasure of engaging in authentic conversations with amazingly interesting people. These are their stories, on location and unfiltered. Presented by 8B Media, this is Half the City.
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, Brian.
Good. So let's just dive right into it. I mean, you've got a pretty interesting background, right? I mean, not only do you have the 40 years of experience and stuff, but when you're dealing with elite performance, typically I would think of somebody that has a pretty, strong sports background. But for those of you listening at home, you can't see the fine doctor here. You don't really strike me as a jock, right? So for those listening, we're in Seattle. Dr. Trachtman's what? 5'1"? Maybe not that short, but you're probably what, like 5'4", 5'6", something like that?
I used to be 5'7", and due to aging, I've shrunk a little bit, but I'm about 5'6".
5'6", okay, 5'6", maybe a $120 soaking wet. I'm just kidding. But not a large man.
When I was performing, I was about 135.
135 when you were performing.
Mm-hmm.
Performing what?
College athletics. I was the 137-pound wrestler in college.
Wow.
I was the team pole vaulter.
So you wrestled and track and field in college?
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like you don't strike me as the type that
yeah. So
that would compete at those levels.
I long jump, mm-hmm. and I was sprinted, mm-hmm. and I was on the college record-setting 440 relay team. Back then,
wow.
We used yards and not meters.
So how did you? How did you get into college sports? I mean, I remember when we were talking offline, you were mentioning something about like junior high school.
Okay.
Things along those lines.
They didn't have junior high when I was in school.
Oh, okay.
We had dinosaurs, things like that. But we didn't have
dinosaurs.
We didn't have junior high schools. I've been thinking about how I got into the concept of elite performance. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was in Little League, when I was 11 years old, I liked to steal bases because I was very fast. And in Little League, you can't steal, you can't move from the base until the ball goes past the batter.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Whereas in other leagues, like when I played Babe Ruth League and post American Legion, mm-hmm. and professional, you could leave anytime you want. Mm-hmm. You're taking a chance.
Right.
But in Little League, only once the ball passes the batter. So I remember vividly, and this was a long time ago, over mm-hmm. 60 years ago. Mm-hmm. I remember being on first base and blocking everything out of my mind and waiting for the ball to go past the batter. Mm. And as soon as that would happen, I would run as fast as I could to second base. And most of the time, I was successful.
Nice.
I could steal third base, not all the time, or as much of the time as second base, but quite often. And I think I even stole home plate once or twice.
Wow. That's impressive, because, stealing second is one thing, right? But they've got to throw the ball all the way across the diamond. But, going from second to third, that's a much shorter distance, right? Well, or stealing home for that matter.
Little League at 60 feet.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And the throw is also 60 feet.
Right.
From the catcher to the third baseman.
Mm-hmm. The stealing home, so how do you, you've done that a couple of times, but how did you, what was your, you remember what your, this was Little League a long time ago, but
I would be on third base, mm-hmm. and I would watch the ball very carefully. And as soon as it went past the batter, I would start to come off the base. And if I saw the catcher fumbling or being not comfortable, I would take off very fast.
That's so cool. Like, that's kind of like, that's the stuff you see in movies, right? Like the feel-good movies where, like The Sandlot or something like that, where the kid takes that chance and it's, he gets it, he scores home, and it's like, crowd goes wild, right? Because it's so rare. Nice. So that kind of got your start into. I mean, if you're drowning everything else out, like what kind of, like, what were you experiencing? What were those first inklings when you were that age?
I didn't think much about it then.
Mm-hmm.
When I was pole vaulting in college, so beginning of my sophomore year, I went to the track coach, and I said I want to pole vault. So he looked at me and had the same attitude that you just said. Trachtman, you don't look like what you could even get across the street okay. And I said I'd like to pole vault. And so he said, well, you don't have the upper body strength. I said, well, that's strange that you mentioned that, because the wrestling coach, who was world renowned, who was on the Olympic Committee and one of the top refs in the whole world, he made me the 137-pound wrestler, and at that time I weigh 133 pounds. Mm-hmm. So apparently he thinks I have upper body strength, because or else he would have put me down to 123 pounds.
Right.
So I said, just give me some tests to do and see. I'm not going to argue with you. If you say no, but give me a chance. So he said, all right, go downstairs and suit up and come up to the gym. Mm-hmm. So I go downstairs and I put on gym stuff, come upstairs. He said, okay, climb up the ropes, do this, do that, all this stuff. I did everything very easily. And he said, okay, go downstairs, take a shower, change your clothes, and come to my office. Mm-hmm. So I did that, come to his office. And so this was September 1964. Mm. And I remember walking into his office. He was sitting behind one of those institutional gray steel desks that had a center drawer. It had another drawer to the right, and on the bottom right had a drawer that would hold file folders.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I walk in. He reaches into the file folder drawer, takes out a manila folder, hands it to me, reaches into the center drawer of his desk, takes out a set of keys, gives me the keys and the folder, and he says, okay, you're going to be the pole vaulter. Oh. I said, okay, thank you. And
so what were the keys for?
The keys were for where the stanchions and the cross piece for the pole vault and the poles.
Oh, okay. So you can get out and practice whenever you wanted.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And in those days, the pole didn't bend.
Yeah, that's right. So it took even more strength to get up and over, I would imagine.
So when I left his office and I walked a little away, I opened up the folder, and what was it? It was an article from Sports Illustrated of someone pole vaulting. It was in time sequence. And that's how I learned how to pole vault. The track coach never said one word to me after that about pole vaulting.
So you didn't pole vault before you read this article?
No.
You just woke up one day and said, I want to be a pole vaulter.
Well, I had wanted to in high school.
Oh, okay.
And in high school, I was a little shorter and a little skinnier. So the track coach, he just brushed it off.
Yeah.
But he also brushed off in my sophomore year that I was a sprinter. And then in my senior year, I was the number 2 in the 100-yard dash, and I would do the anchor on the 880-yard relay. So each one ran 220 yards. Mm-hmm. So I was the anchor man, and usually the fastest one is the anchor man too.
Yep. But
even knowing that, he just had this attitude. Some smart little Jewish guy thinks he could pole vault. Give me a break.
Don't judge a book by its cover, right?
Yeah. So when I wanted to pole vault because I just thought it was fun. Mm-hmm. I didn't think that I was to be a champion or to do better than somebody else who was doing it on the team. Mm-hmm. It just looked like it was fun. So I would, before the wrestling season, which began in mid-October or November, I would go out, onto the track where the pole vault pit was, and I would practice pole vaulting. Mm-hmm. And when I did it, everything occurred in slow motion. I have to remember, I was very relaxed. There was no competitive baggage along with it. It was just something to do for fun. Mm-hmm. And I just remember that, you run as fast as you can, plant the pole in this little hole in the ground, wait for the pole to go straight up vertically, mm-hmm. do a handstand on top of the pole, push the pole away, go up over the bar, and land in a pit of sawdust and sand. Mm. It didn't have foam then, it was sawdust and sand. Mm. So you had to know how to fall, and from wrestling, I knew how to fall. That was not a problem. Every once in a while, when I was doing my studies, I would get the same feeling of the pole vaulting. And when I would do that, I would have a photographic memory, and I could speed read. Hmm. And so after a while, my studies became like a joke, that I could go into an exam, and I would have all the notes photographed in my mind. Huh. And sometimes I would take blank paper. I asked the professor for blank paper, and I would just make an outline of the notes that were photographed in my mind. Then I would eat a chocolate bar. I would take a 5 to 10 minute rest, and just to get me completely relaxed in the zone. Then I would take the test and get an A. It was just...
What you're talking about in the sports stuff is like getting into the zone, right?
Yes.
It sounds like the same thing with these studies and the test taking. I love being in the zone. Like that's my, I don't know exactly how to say it. I mean, obviously I think most people that perform at a high level, I think they get into the zone, right? And like that's the sweet spot, right?
Yes.
That's the sweet spot where, you're doing something that you love doing, you do it really well, and when you're doing it, it's almost like nothing else matters. Kind of like, you remember the movie Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe? When he's like looking at the chalkboard and all these symbols and stuff are just like floating around, like kind of like that, right? I mean, that's how it feels to me, anyways.
When you're in the zone, we can explain it this way. In our Western culture, most of our information is in the center of our visual field. Mm-hmm. Computer screens, television.
Right. It's very point A to point B.
Yes.
Direct line of sight.
Very few tasks are involved in the periphery. Mm-hmm. In the vision system and the brain, there's two separate channels for information processing. There's central processing and peripheral processing, which are analogous to analytical, which is center, and emotional, which is peripheral. Oh, so okay. as we know that we have analytical intelligence, but we also have emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Right.
When you're in the zone, you're using both. Oh. And using both doesn't detract from either one. In fact, it's additive. So, for example, you could think of being just central or being just peripheral as a straight line, like you said, from A to B. Mm-hmm. Now, some people have the ability to switch from center to periphery or periphery to center. So we used computer terminology for that, say flip-flop. Mm-hmm. Flip-flop from one method of processing to another.
Yep.
Then there are other people who can... so the flip-flop is like a two-dimensional plane. Mm-hmm. Like a piece of paper is basically a two-dimensional plane. It has a thickness, but it's negligible. Mm-hmm. People who are parallel processing, it's like a sphere. If you can imagine in your mind the difference between a line, a plane, and a sphere. The sphere has tremendously more volume than the other two. In fact, the line doesn't even have volume.
Right.
And this is what happens with our processing. So when we're parallel processing, when we're in the zone, we're able to do all these things. And the point you made is very good. I've had, when I was in New York, I had patients who were Broadway performers, and they call it in the moment.
Sure.
And they said that the great stage performers, and the example one of the patients gave was Laurence Olivier, that just being in the same theater when he was performing, you could feel it. You could feel that energy. We call it charisma, or people call other things.
Sure.
But that's it. When you're in the zone, the brain waves change, and the brain wave is called the alpha wave. That gets very big. This is the Zen state.
Yep.
And this is optimizes body function and produces lots of good body chemicals. And one of those is beta endorphin, which makes us feel good.
So a lot of that's sciencey jargon, which admittedly, I don't know shit about. But it's fine. I think the way that you explained it, with like Laurence Olivier and like other actors, like or professional athletes, like we're going to get into in a minute. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like when you're in the zone or in the moment or in the flow or whatever you want to call it, it's almost like everything else slows down. It's like it's in slow motion, right? Like you're just seeing everything.
That's how the athletes would describe it.
Yeah.
Particularly baseball players, so they could see the rotation of the seams of the baseball when it's leaving the pitcher's hand, so they know whether it would be a 2-seam or 4-seam fastball or a breaking ball.
Which is crazy to think about because that ball goes so fast, right? And I mean, you're talking 80 to 100 miles an hour,
right.
90 feet away, or however far it is. I forget in baseball.
It was 60 feet, 6 inches.
60. Oh, right. That's right. But you're right. So it's like a split second, right?
About 0.3 of a second. Well, about depending on how fast, less than 0.6 of a second.
Yeah.
Could be faster, but not any more than that.
Right. I mean, they say like, it's often been said that hitting a baseball at the major league level is like one of the hardest things to do in sports. Because you're right, because you've got like that fraction of a second. Not only to understand how fast the ball is going, but the curvature, right? And what type of pitch is happening, how it's gonna waver as it moves.
It's not coming straight towards you.
No. Even if it's a fastball, it's coming like down, right?
Now, Roger Withrow, who was the world champion in the air rifle when I was training him, he could see the bullet going through the paper target.
Wow.
Now, you could say that, he was full of baloney, but
it sounds like bullshit to me.
Yeah, my answer is he has the gold medal and you don't.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever he says, there's credibility there.
Now, when I was training the Navy pilots in Pensacola who land on the aircraft carriers, they said that you can't do that unless you see in slow motion. There's just too many things happening all at once. Yeah. For example, the plane's going hundreds of miles an hour.
Yep.
The aircraft carrier is probably going 60, 70 miles an hour. And it's rocking left and right. Or
right, because it's on the water.
Starboard, have to keep our language correct. and fore and aft. So it's doing all these things, and you have to land this, and you only get one shot at the hook.
Right. And
they said, they call it streaming, where they can see everything on the control panel, and they can see everything on the deck, everything. And it just is, like you say, just in the zone, and just happens.
I want to dive into all that stuff. Like, there's a lot to unpack there. First, I'd like to kind of pull it back a little bit and kind of understand how you got there, how you got to that point. You're doing sports in college, right? You're recognizing that you're getting into this like flow state. Maybe you're not sure exactly what it was or whatever. But how did you go from Joe Trachtman, wrestler, track and field athlete in college, to expert in the field of elite performance?
I have to give myself a plug because you mentioned. I also played a lot of baseball. And when I was a senior in high school, I was playing in an outside league. And there was a paper in New York City then called the Journal American, since it went out of print. they would have an annual scholarship for combination baseball player scholar. And I came in second in New York City, like the whole New York City.
Nice. Like a dual threat.
Yeah, so I also played baseball. Okay, so how did I get into it? So after undergraduate school, I went to optometry college. And after optometry college, I went into the Army.
I think that was during Vietnam, right? If I recall. Yes. So you were an optometrist.
I was an optometrist
in the Army.
I was
in the Vietnam area.
Actually, my title was Chief Optometry Officer, U.S. Kirk Army Hospital, Aberdeen Proving Ground.
The Aberdeen Proving Ground. Just for the listeners, can you explain a little bit about what the Aberdeen Proving Ground is or was?
Okay, Aberdeen Proving Ground. At that time, I don't know now. At that time, was the Center for Ordnance. So they had the Ordnance School,
which is like explosives and bombs and things like that.
Yes. Yep. And also, it was the headquarters for the Test and Evaluation Command, the acronym TCOM.
All right.
In the military, they love acronyms.
Indeed.
When you first get your orders, you're trying to read that.
No idea. You're like, what am I? You're like, where am I going? What is this? Yeah.
My brother was in the Navy Reserve, so when I got my orders, I have him come over and read them to me. I said, what is all this stuff? He was laughing. So TCOM is where they would test all the advanced weapons. So at that time, it was 1970, they were testing the laser tank.
Laser tank?
Yeah, we use a laser rangefinder to pinpoint targets.
Oh, okay.
Nice. 50 years ago, that was a novel.
Technology's changed a little bit since then.
So Aberdeen, at that time, a population of 40,000.
And you're coming from Brooklyn.
And I'm coming from Brooklyn. There's probably 40,000 people on my street.
I know, right? Funny.
So my clinic was open from 8 to 4:30, and then by 5:30 they pulled the sidewalks in, and I'm sitting there in my apartment twiddling my thumb and said, now what am I going to do till 8 o'clock in the morning?
Right.
So fortunately, I got accepted at the Johns Hopkins University. They had a graduate program, master's program. And during that program, I started to learn about biofeedback. And so I thought biofeedback would be a very interesting application of vision training. And so when I was discharged and came back to New York, I wanted to pursue a PhD in experimental psychology.
Real quick, I want to back up a second. Can you explain the concept behind biofeedback? Like, what is that?
Yes.
And then how that fits into vision training that you're talking about?
Okay. Biofeedback, it can be defined as becoming aware of a body function or process that you're not normally aware of.
Okay.
For example, if you want to do biofeedback of finger temperature, which is very helpful for people who have migraine headaches, we would use a sensor that's not sensitive just to 1/10 of a degree, like a regular thermometer that you would use, like 98.6 or 100.2, whatever. It would be sensitive to 1,000th or even 1/10,000th of a degree.
Wow.
So a very, very small change, you measure a very, very small change in your temperature and then produce a very big sound or light display corresponding to that very small change.
Okay.
And with that kind of feedback, you can learn how to control your temperature, your heart rate, body temperature, all these different things.
Yeah.
So the muscles inside the eye that focus.
Being an optometrist, you're saying, okay, this concept here, can this also be applied?
Yeah. Well, I had done an internship and residency in vision training.
Yeah.
So that was my specialty.
Right.
And so I was very interested in how to improve people's vision naturally. And we could do it with vision training. It would take a long time. We would get good results. But sometimes it would take a very long time, and a lot of patients would drop out before they could get good success.
So you can actually improve your eyesight without, just needing to use glasses or LASIK surgery or something like that.
Yes, exactly. And we can do it for whether you need glasses or you have a lazy eye, or one of your eye turns, whatever vision problem there is, we can do vision training for it. Now they call it vision therapy, then they call it vision training.
So you're getting into the biofeedback, right? And you're saying, hey, how can I apply this towards the vision training?
As I was pursuing this, I came across a NASA article where a NASA scientist named Robert Randall trained some NASA pilots to improve their vision. So I took his report to my dissertation committee. And to get a PhD is very formal. You have to have a committee, you have a chairman, head, you have to have a written proposal, and it's very formal.
A lot of hoops to jump through.
And the proposal has to be substantial. It usually is something novel, a replication of something that there has been some controversy about. So I brought to their attention something novel, being able to take people who wear glasses and give them the biofeedback training to see if that would be helpful. Whereas the NASA research was done with astronauts who were almost supermen.
But yeah, they're like the top of the top of the top, right?
Exactly. And so training their vision, may not relate to the general population. So that was my dissertation. And so after that, I finished that in 1978. And then in the early 1980s, a patient came to me and he said, I want to be a New York City fireman. But I said to him, his name's Robert, and it was in Omni magazine in 1985. They wrote up his story. You could only see the big E at 10 feet.
When you say the big E, you're talking about like the vision chart?
Yeah, the big E that's about 10 inches.
Like the biggest thing at the top.
Right.
So you go through and you read the different letters.
Right. So that's all you could see without your glasses. That you have to be able to see 20/30, which is about 1.5 inches. Without your glasses to pass the fire department.
So he's basically like blind, right? I mean, almost legally blind.
Legally blind means that with glasses you can't see.
Oh, okay.
But this is without his glasses. With the glasses he could see 20/20. Smaller letter. But without his glasses, that all. But the fire department regulation was you had to see 20/30 or maybe 20/40, a much smaller letter, 1/10 of the size of what he could see. And I said, I don't think that's possible. So he said, no, I really need to do this. I don't like doing any other work. I want to be a fireman. So I said, okay, let me reassemble my dissertation apparatus that I had put away in boxes, figuring that, once it's over, it's over. And so it took me about a month or so to do it. Gave him about 15 or 17 training sessions, and he actually passed.
Wow.
He actually passed. And so he subsequently was retired from it. Yeah.
So you're able to take the apparatus, right? So this was like a machine that you put together?
It was a desktop unit that had two components. It had a head and chin rest. So if anyone has gone to the eye doctor, when he looks at your eyes with a microscope or measures your eyes, otherwise, sometimes you have to put your head in a chin and headrest where your chin goes in a cup and your forehead goes up against the bar and to hold the head steady.
Yep, got it.
So that was one part, and that had the optical system that would measure how your eye's focusing, and then that was connected to an electronic box that had all the electronics in it. Back then, we had integrated circuits and resistors and capacitors and big power supplies that had to be separate.
Big machines back then.
Right. No tubes, but it still had a lot of bulk to it. And an LED display and buttons and knobs control and an oscilloscope, which is like a TV screen that would show the image that was being projected on the eye, so we could line up and see how people were doing. And so that was the first instrument.
So did you, before you applied this with the firefighter, did you test it out or use it with other?
No, it was my dissertation research.
Oh, okay.
So I only did it for the subjects in the dissertation. I hadn't done it with anybody else after that. He was the first one. So after the success with him, then we started to train more people who were nearsighted because I said, oh, no, we have a method to do this. And then people would bring their children in who were nearsighted or becoming nearsighted, but they were farsighted. People over the age of 40 start to have problems reading up close. So they would say, does it work for that? I said, I don't know. Let's try it. So it would work for that. Then someone would bring a child in that had a lazy eye. It worked for that. Someone came in with an eye that turns in or out. It did that. There's another condition called nystagmus where the eyes oscillate back and forth, left to right. And it worked for that. So it worked for all these different things. And that's when eventually we got to the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Olympic shooting teams because they wanted to improve their vision.
So tell me a bit about the Pirates work. Like, what did you do with them? And like,
okay. First, I went down to, I think it was Sarasota, where they were doing spring training.
Cool.
In 1988, and the general manager of the Pirates then was Sid Thrift.
So 88 was the year with like Barry Bonds, Bobby Bonilla.
Yep. Yeah, Andy Slight. Ben Slight.
When was that their World Series run?
No, they almost lost the pennant to the Mets.
Oh, that's right.
But they were it was a very close contest, and then they would have gone to the World Series.
Yep. So did you wound up working with the Pirates throughout the season, or?
Right. So what we did is, I trained a number of the athletes, the baseball players, and their vision improved so much that we usually do the testing at 20 feet. But at 20 feet, they could see the bottom line of everything. So we had to move it back to 30 feet. And they still could see the bottom line. So it just blew them out of the water.
Yeah.
So what we did is I trained one of the graduate students at the University of Pittsburgh in the psychology department. And how did I entice him to do it? I said, I need someone to give training to the baseball players. And if you want to do it, you can go to every home game for free.
Nice. That's it's a little bit of a perk.
So I trained him. So he would give the players, whoever wanted it, because professional athletes, you can't force them to do anything. You suggest it. But most of them, would come in and do a little tune-up before the game. And then I would fly in about every month just to check up on everything. And it worked out very, very well. The players really liked it. Sid Thrift liked it so much that in his book, The Game According to Sid, Chapter 5 is all about me.
Nice. You got a full dedicated chapter. Yeah, that's sweet. I mean, that because, again, like the 88, like the Pirates were like beast mode that year, right? Like,
yes. The Bobby Bonilla was Triple Crown.
Did he win the Triple Crown? Or
he had it. He had it for a while.
Yeah, right. A long while. But like that was like his big that was his breakout year, right? Like he was good. He was good before that, but like that was his year.
Yes.
Were you working with him that year?
Yes.
Oh, nice. So he's probably. I'm gonna take a look really quick. I'm gonna see if I can see some. I want to see some stat lines.
Yeah, actually, I had a very good relationship with him. Yeah. He lived in the Bronx, so number one, he was from New York City.
Yep.
But his father lived in Brooklyn, so anybody who lived in Brooklyn was cool, And so we got along very, very well, and it helped him quite a bit. It helped Bob walk one of the pitches, and another one of the pitches. I forget his last name. His first name was Jim. They had a whole article on GQ about him, how it helped the pitchers so much to really get focused in what they were doing when there was so much crowd noise, not be distracted.
So that's when, what was that when you started realizing that, hey, it's more than just improving eyesight, but it's also like diving into the zone?
So right after that, I started to measure brainwaves while we were doing the training.
Okay.
And that's when I discovered that when the muscles in the eye relaxed an optimal amount, that the brain waves changed to what we mentioned before, the alpha state, this Zen meditative state.
Right.
And that was novel. You can have a patent on it.
Oh,
because
sweet.
Previous to that, in the literature, and it's still in books now, that when you eyes are closed, the alpha wave is big, but when you open your eyes, the alpha gets smaller.
Okay, so what does that mean?
that means that we were able to train people to go into alpha with their eyes open, and that was the novelty.
Nice.
Whereas before, people didn't think that they could do it. In the 60s, college students were doing alpha training to get the buzz out of it. I guess if they were on other stuff, they got extra buzz.
Sure.
But when they opened their eyes, it would go away. So they stopped doing it. But when the players would tell me that they got into this altered state, I wanted to measure their brain waves. And having a PhD in experimental psychology, I was very familiar with those kinds of things. So we were measuring their brain waves. People might ask, what's an eye doctor doing measuring brainwaves? Well,
right. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's an interesting cross between the doctorate of optometry and the
experimental psychology.
Yeah.
In experimental psychology, one of the subspecialties is vision.
God, that's really cool. I mean, like I said, I can't say it enough. Like, I love being in the zone. Like, that's my favorite place to be. If I could do it all day, every day, that'd be like ideal.
One of the most rewarding things of the training now is that with the increase in the diagnosis of autistic spectrum disorder, I have quite a number of young children, like 7 to 9. Their parents bring them into the office because they've been diagnosed being on the spectrum and this, that, and the other thing. And within 10 training visits with the training device, teach them how to concentrate, and they usually by the 6th or 7th session, they're going to the library or going to their parents' bookshelves and taking out books to read. Whereas before, getting them to read was like the worst thing in the world for them to do.
No, I hear that. My nephew's on the spectrum. I don't think he's like super deep on the spectrum, right? He's not like Rain Man autistic. But he definitely shows signs, and I could see where some of that concentration stuff, or being able to like pick up a book and like read and just go and chill. I think that have huge positive impacts on him and other people like him.
If any of your listeners are interested, I'll give myself another plug.
Sure.
And also a big shout out to Brian because he did the filming. That if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see that there's a 1-hour video understanding autism.
What's your YouTube channel?
Joseph Trachtman.
Joseph Trachtman. Yep. You'll see the spelling of that when you look at the podcast episode. That's cool. So you worked with the Pirates during their big run, Bobby Bonilla's breakout year, right? I mean, it's really because of that, and the next three, during that run in the late '80s, early '90s, when they were like a threat every year, right? It was kind of because of that he wound up going to the Mets and got that deal where he's still getting paid. He's still getting paid, and he hasn't played for like 20 years. That's got to be the greatest deal in history.
Yeah, and as you asked me before, I don't get a percentage of that.
Yeah, that's too bad. You should have worked that out.
Yeah.
But so you've done the work with the autistic kids. You've done stuff with the Pirates.
Yeah, to get back to the shooters.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about. So the U.S. Olympic shooting team.
Yeah, so in 1992, the silver medalist, Buddy Firth, I had given him training, and then the national women's champion, who competed well into the 90s after that, she also figured it out. And this is funny. So we gave her training in the morning, and she was having trouble figuring it out and was getting a little angry about it because, people at the champion level don't enjoy not being successful.
Of course.
And so she came back in the afternoon, and she really nailed it. And then shortly after that, she broke all her records. And then late in the 93, 94, 95, she continued and just kept winning more awards and setting records.
And, I was a pretty good shooter back in the Marines. I was a rifle expert, almost a perfect score, that sort of thing. And so I sit there and I think about when you're shooting, like for me during my time, it was the M16, right? I think it's the M4 now. But either way, you've got to qualify once a year in the range. And when I was doing qualifications, you you've got to qualify 3 or 4 different ways, right? One's standing, one's kneeling, one's sitting, and one's prone or laying down. So they've all got their own different challenges, but really the secret to shooting straight and shooting true, one is the breathing, right? Slow, measured breath. 2 is relaxing as much as possible, right? And that's relaxing your breathing. It's relaxing your body. It's also relaxing your eye so you can keep that straight and focused. And relaxing your mind too. Absolutely. You can't be thinking about anything else.
No, when you relax the mind, everything else goes. Everything else goes into a relaxed state.
Yep. Like being in the zone like that, I mean, that's about as optimal as you possibly can have for keeping that aim straight and true. Right? So I could see totally how that works out for the Olympic team and how that worked out for sure. I know you mentioned you also did some stuff with the Patriots and the Bruins and things like that.
Yes.
Can you kind of dive into that a little bit?
Hey, with the New England Patriots, the player I worked with was a offensive tackle. So, at that time, he was about 6'3", 6'4", weighed 260. Now he'd be a running back or safety. But back then, he, that was pretty big.
Yep.
And what he liked most about it was that if he could get off the line the slightest fraction of a second faster than the guy on the other side, that made all the difference in the world.
Absolutely.
It didn't make how big and strong you were, but if you got to jump on the other guy, that was the big benefit, and that's what he enjoyed the most about it. Now,
Nice.
The hockey player, the Boston Bruin that I worked with most was Kenny Linsman, and
he was with the Bruins, right?
He was with them, yeah.
Yep.
And he was noted for his speed on ice. So he actually told me that he had a challenge with the Olympic speed skater Eric. I don't remember his last name now.
That's fine.
But this guy was the gold medalist in the speed skating. But it didn't happen. But that's how how fast he was, and he just loved it because he said it opened up his periphery tremendously, and then he could see where everybody on the ice was, so his passing was better, and his goal shots were better. And he just loved it.
You see more of the field. Like, that's kind of what I think about when I hear NFL commentators talk about great quarterbacks, for example. And usually the great quarterbacks, they see the entire field, right? And maybe they're looking to the right, but they can see that the receiver on the left is opening up or is going to open up, so they can anticipate that.
They don't. They see everything all at once.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I've spoken to quarterbacks about this, and once they step back into the pocket, that's when the whole field opens up for them if they're in the zone, and then they can see who's open, who's not open in the smallest fraction of a second.
Yep.
And that's how they can do it. If you're in normal vision mode, you don't understand how you could do it. Also, hockey. If you're watching hockey on a small television screen, you can't follow it. It's just too fast.
So you did all this work. So you discovered this. You discovered this zone-inducing concept through biofeedback. The cross between optometry and experimental psychology. Which led to a lot of work with NASA, Pirates, the Pittsburgh Pirates, Bobby Bonilla, players with the Patriots and the Bruins and autistic kids, things like that. I heard you mention something earlier about jet fighter pilots as well. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yes. I think the best way to explain it is with this story. So around 1988, I met an Israeli, someone who had been an Israeli pilot, and he was, I think, either number 3 or number 5 of their aces. So he was, top. And I gave him the training, and usually if people want to know, how to do it, and because it's an experience like riding a bicycle, you really can't tell people. Just play with the sound.
Yep.
Just to and we'll explain more about it. So we'll give a demo. So we do a one time, and I can see he's sort of getting it. And then the second time, he really nailed it. And he sits back with a big smile on his face. And then he says, now I know. So I said, what do you know? Tell me. He said, when we were being trained, they told us a few things. One was that when you're in combat, and he had obviously had been in combat, or else he wouldn't have the rating of being an ace.
Sure.
Although your electronics are going to tell you exactly where the enemy plane is, it says they still want you to make visual contact.
Yep.
But when you're looking at uniformly blue sky, it's hard to focus the eyes because you're looking up close at the control panel, and now you have to get your eyes to look far away, but there's nothing out there to see.
Yep.
So your eyes don't know what to do. So he said they taught us to look out at the wing and just get the feeling of focusing from the control panel to the tip of the wing, and just practice that and get to understand that feeling, that experience. He said, once I remembered that, and I applied it to what I was doing here with the training, that made the sound go the highest. And then after that, it just made that exercise with the wing so much more powerful because now I can do it anytime I want. And,
awesome.
And I don't think there's more to say about for pilots, for jet fighter pilots.
Well, because the thing is, even with jet fighter pilots, like you have to be elite athletes as well.
Yes.
Right. And I think you were talking earlier about landing on an aircraft carrier,
yes,
that sort of thing. Like just for some perspective, just think about this for a second, people. Aircraft carriers are how long?
3 football fields.
3 football fields. So we're talking 300 yards long. And when you're flying in your jet, you're probably 10, 30, 50,000 feet in the air, something like that. Super high anyways, right? So like if you've ever been on the top of a building on a skyscraper and you look down and you look at like a car, or, how small, or like people looking like ants or whatever.
At that height,
yeah,
the size of the aircraft carrier would be like an ant if you're on top of a tall building.
Yeah. You've got to have, you've got the electronic equipment, right? But you've got to have that visual. You got to, get that pinpoint on that ant on this giant ocean. So kind of like looking at the sky where everything's blue.
And you're flying, 1,000, 1,500 miles an hour, maybe faster. The speeds are classified, but they're going, 3, 4 times faster than.
When you're talking Mach 3, stuff like that, super.
Yeah. It's not 500 miles an hour like on your commercial jet. It's 3, 4 times faster.
So you're flying super fast. The vision is, it's all blue or whatever. So like you were just saying, it's like hard to for your eyes to understand what to look at. And you find this little ant, this dot in the middle of the ocean, and somehow you've got to get down there, and you've got one shot to get that hook.
Right.
That takes incredible skill, not just from the physical sense, but from the visual sense.
No, absolutely. I was on a panel discussion about sports vision, and there were some naysayers. There's always naysayers.
Of course.
There's some naysayers on the
haters, man,
and saying that you can't train the athletes to have better vision, or it won't make their performance any better. So I had anticipated this. So I brought with me a stack of documents, mostly from research done at Pensacola on Navy jet fighter pilot training. A stack about more than a foot high. And I put them on the table next to the microphone. And when it came my time to speak, this is what I said. I said, I think we would all agree that jet fighter pilots are elite athletes, elite performers. And, some people were a little hesitant, but eventually everyone agreed.
Well, if you don't understand what it takes to be a jet fighter pilot, it might not just click,
Well, everyone there was an eye doctor, so they had, a basic idea. And then I said, well, now the question is whether training improves their performance or not. I said, here, well, see all these papers here? These are all documents from the Navy training. I said, so there's no question that you can train elite performance.
Awesome. God, there's so much cool stuff wrapped in there in your career, man. Like, you're talking about, again, all of the like the cream of the crop stuff, that sort of thing, the autism stuff. Something I'm really interested in, personally, because, I'm affected by it as well. I know you do some stuff related to like PTSD too, right?
Yes.
And, as you know, and listeners, I mean, as you get to know me, you know that I've lived with PTSD from my military days for about 18 years, from, around the 9/11 times. You've got your Zone Track, right? Which is a much smaller device now, than that desktop model that you were talking about. This is more like a pair of glasses, almost.
Yes.
Almost. It's a prototype. You use the Zone Track to train those eyes, right?
Yes.
Biofeedback device, for all the elite performance and autism and PTSD. So how does it, how did you come across that it helps people with PTSD, and how does that work?
So as you mentioned before, I was on active duty during the Vietnam War,
mm-hmm.
and I saw at least 10,000 military people during my tour.
Mm-hmm.
And many of them had come back from Vietnam.
Sure.
And they didn't call it PTSD then.
Right.
But they all had something.
Well, back then they called it like fog of war, or like combat fatigue.
Yeah, it was all different things.
Right.
And,
shell shock.
Yes. And because of that, their experience, combined with whatever Agent Orange was doing to them,
mm-hmm.
Many of them came back, unfortunately, addicted to either drugs or alcohol.
Right.
And not blaming them. They were all good people, but this is what they were exposed to.
Yeah.
Very traumatic experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole rules of engagement and the whole philosophy about the war. It's just
Vietnam was a shit show.
Just a mess. But anyway, I had experience with all this. I didn't know what to do with it then, because nobody was really talking about it then.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to remember, maybe 5-6 years ago, I was looking for something on the internet related to my research, and I came across a program called Homecoming for Veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a program where you do biofeedback to veterans who have PTSD.
Mm.
So I registered for the program. They check your credentials and do all this other stuff, and everything was fine. And so when a veteran calls me, this is what I tell them. I said, I'll give you 10 weekly sessions at no charge. Because I'm a veteran, I have great compassion for other veterans who've had bad experiences. So this is what we do. They come in, I give them a regular eye exam to make sure that their eyes are healthy and general health, and they're not on medications that will interfere with the training. And then I introduce them to the training, and after 2 or 3 sessions, they start to have the relaxation feeling from it, in the zone feeling. And then the next visit, I say, okay, now before we start the training today, I want you to recall the PTSD incident and get that in your mind with that emotion, and then open your eyes and do the training and substitute the relaxation feeling to the bad emotion.
Oh, interesting.
And doing that repetitively, they're able to do it voluntarily, and sometimes they can even do it involuntarily. Once that dark night starts coming into your head, the white knight will just push it away without you even trying to do anything.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, there's so many veterans out there that have PTSD, obviously, but there's also so many people in general, like civilians and other things, where that could really benefit from stuff like that. Like there's I know a lot of PTSD affected veterans, and they go to the VA and stuff like that, and the VA just loads them up with drugs, right? And they just turn into these zombies, and nothing really helps.
If you remember last week, one of the veterans who was at our gathering had a service dog, and so I asked him, when I see someone with a service dog, I think that they're blind.
Yeah.
So being an eye doctor, I'm curious. I said, what's your eye problem? Oh, I don't have an eye problem. This is for my PTSD. So when I went to the VA, they loaded me up with drugs.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand it. I couldn't take them. And so they gave me the service dog. And as soon as I start to get agitated, the dog senses it and comes over and calms me down. And when I mentioned this to my wife, she said, that's great, but wouldn't it be better if he didn't need the dog, if he could just do it on his own? And I said, yeah, just getting the word out.
Yeah. Interesting.
I've sent some of my research on that to senators and congressmen, and other than getting a somewhat nice letter from, at that time, the chairman of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, thanking me for my work, none of them have followed up.
Isn't that funny?
No, it's not.
The irony of it. The irony
it's
of
tragic.
It is, well, yeah, of course. But that's what I'm saying. Like the irony of it, with these big drug lobbies and stuff like that, for whatever reason, you got all these kids, 18, 19 years old, whatever, guys and girls that, put their life on the line for the country. They went and served and they didn't even come back whole, if they came back at all. But the ones that came back a lot of them didn't come back whole. And what does the VA want to do? Say, oh yeah, we support veterans, that sort of thing. We're just going to load them up with drugs, turn them into zombies, and hope everything's good. Like you can sit there and say, hey, guess what? You don't need those drugs. Like I said, I've lived with PTSD for 18 years. I went through the whole. I was loaded up with drugs early on, but I was like, fuck all that. Like I didn't want to be a zombie, right? So I've lived without prescription medication almost the entire time that I've been on it, or that I've been affected by it. And I've learned to manage it, right? And a lot of it has to do with like meditation and getting in that Zen sort of thing. But that means a lot of quiet time, closing my eyes, that kind of thing, right? Like you were talking about.
Right. It takes a long time and a tremendous commitment.
Yeah. I'd love to be able to do it with my eyes open. I think I can sometimes. But I know I've done some work with your zone track a bit, and I love it. And that's part of the reason why I want to talk to you today. I do see you have it here.
Yes.
Do you mind if I give it a shot, give it a whirl?
Absolutely.
All right.
Get it set up.
Sweet. So for you guys listening, probably going to want to turn down the volume a little bit because it's a high-pitched frequency. And basically, it's so this is it's a prototype, right? He's working on funding for this. But if you hear that pitch, basically this looks like kind of like a set of glasses, almost like the 3D glasses with the squares, right? Like not blue and red, but like flat square panels, a couple of lights in front of it, and then you've got the rest of the device, which I'm holding with two hands. And basically, how do we do this?
Bring it up to your eye, about 2 finger widths.
Okay.
And you blink your eye, and you should get a warbling sound. And then your eye's lined up. And then once your eye's lined up, you just want to make the sound go higher in pitch. And just like learning how to ride a bicycle, you only learn from the experience. There's nothing I could tell you,
right,
or show you.
And so we do both eyes, or do one eye at a time?
We do one eye at a time because the eyes actually can focus independent of each other.
Cool.
So we have to train each eye.
So which one am I doing first?
Should be the right eye.
The right eye. Okay.
If I push the correct button.
And I keep both eyes open, right?
Yes.
All right. Cool. All right. Here it goes. All right. You hear that? That's the sound I'm looking for, right?
Yes. You're in the zone.
Oh yeah. So like I'm looking at this, but I'm almost looking through it.
And you're seeing the whole room.
Oh, I can see my elbows. I mean, I'm leaning forward with my elbows on my knees, and I can see my elbows. I can see your shoes, Joe. I can even see that far corner of the room where the L-shaped couch ends. Yeah. Some people don't get this. I think it takes a certain brain.
So you can rest now.
Yeah. So then we chill for a minute, right?
Yes.
Talk about the grass. But yeah, like I could almost see. So my phone is plugged in the exact opposite corner of where I'm at, probably 100. So if my line of sight is a flat line, we're talking about a circle. That's almost 180 degrees behind me. Probably talking like 150, something like that.
No, 180 degrees would be flat.
Oh, so it's more than 180. God, I'm an idiot. Yeah, so we're talking beyond 180 degrees here. Like we're talking, that's probably closer to 200 or so, right?
More than 200.
More than 200. Yeah.
360 would be being able to see behind you.
Right, of course.
So 180 is this way, and then 360 is that way. So halfway would be 240.
Yeah, so that's probably closer to 240. But it's almost like my vision has just like opened up. Like it's almost kind of like I mean, in the zone, of course, but also like for those of you that don't understand what it's like to be in the zone, kind of like you're really hyped up on caffeine, but like relaxed at the same time.
So I'll tell you another story.
Yeah.
So with the desktop model, one of the doctors was in California, and one day he calls me and he says, "I have a patient here who wants to thank you for developing the device that was called the Track Vision Trainer. The new one's the Zone Track." So I said, "Let me look at my schedule, and I'll see when I'm going to be in your area."
Mm-hmm.
And I did, and I said, "Okay, I'll be out there during this week," and we made a time. Now, I don't believe in any coincidences, but less than 2 months ago, this patient called me, and I hadn't seen him for 30 years. He wanted to thank me again. This is what happened. He had come in for vision training, and he had been a cocaine addict. And he told me he was able to break his cocaine addiction by doing the training. Because he was able to, as you mentioned, he was able to give himself that little bit of high, but in a very controlled way, not an overpowering way, but in a natural way. What do I mean natural way? Is that you're making good chemicals and you're preventing bad chemicals. When you take a drug, any kind of drug, you're just going one way. You're producing a chemical that's making the nervous system go one way, but it makes the others go out of balance. When you produce things naturally, that's why I like biofeedback so much. You're making good chemicals and balancing the other chemicals. And so he said, "No, I finally tracked you down. I moved from Brooklyn to Seattle, and it's hard to follow me sometimes. And I said, I just want to thank you. You changed my whole life, and everything's just great."
Yeah, it's kind of like I get that because it's kind of like a stimulant, right?
But it stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, and that's what cocaine does. That's what amphetamines do, and that's what makes the pupils.
It's like your mind and eyes are on like high alert.
Yes.
But your body is still super chill.
Yes.
Yeah. Like this is like the best feeling in the world. I understand why people would get like cocaine crates or whatever, because it's like that, right? I guess. I mean, that's what he's saying, right?
That's what I've been told.
Yeah. So based on what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I don't have to do the other stuff. I get.
No, exactly. Like you don't need to do anything.
I have the real thing.
Exactly. Try it again, left eye.
Yes. Okay, let me just get this.
Yep. Do one more trial, and then.
Okay. Blink a few times so they can hear the wobbling sound. So
I'll move back and forth. You hear that?
Yeah, so then you know he lined up, and now he's going to make it go very high and go in the zone. Here he goes.
There it is. Yeah, this is awesome, man. So I remember you said,
okay, good rest.
So I remember you said there's some people that, you know, they either get it or they don't. Like what,
People who are very analytical, and now this is a generalization, so hope no one takes particular offense.
Right.
But lawyers, accountants, engineers, because they're very analytical, they either can't do this at all, or when they do it, it's done in a very feeble way, and they just don't get it or understand it. And that's unfortunate, as we have spoken many times, that most people who are in charge of funding to expand the project are very analytical. And when I give them a demo, they can't make the sound change.
Really?
So they see no utility in this at all. Whereas other people like you and the other veterans in our program, when they do it, after they finish, they're ready to write me a check. Unfortunately, they don't have the money.
Yeah. I mean, I would write you a check right now, man. I would love to take one of those home with me and just like use it every day. You know, start my day off right. Because right now, like I said, I'm like, let's go. Like I'm in.
Your face is flushed.
Yeah, right. I can
and look at your arms; they have color now.
Yeah,
you have a general relaxation response.
I'm ready to go, man. Like I said, I'm chill, but I'm like, and like hyper focused. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I'm sitting here looking at you, but I'm seeing everything. You know, it's almost like I can see your face, but then like right around it kind of gets a little blurry, but then everything else is like clear.
If your audience could see me, around my face is a little blurry because I have a long beard.
That's not a little beard. That's not a little beard. That's a fully, man. That's an impressive beard. Part of the reason why I wanted to bring you on here is to talk about that. You know, like it's I've worked with you with this. I've done several sessions, and it's done wonders for me. And you know, so what do you where are you at right now in terms of like the business cycle?
So right now, we have our business plan. We have executive summary. We have sales. We have a 40-year history of success in the business. We have documentation in scientific journals. And now we're looking for funding to commercialize the product. So we want to repackage it and bring the price way down to maybe $300, $350 to make it affordable for more people. And then also to mass market it, have money to mass market it, because there's millions of people that can have the quality of their life dramatically improved just by doing the training every once in a while. And it's a shame that we see people having all kinds of problems, health problems or emotional problems or learning problems or problems at their job that can be resolved by being in the zone.
Not only that, but it's just like the best feeling in the world. You know, like anybody who's done something that requires high performance, again, whether you're studying for, you know, whether you're at university or something studying, or whether you're doing a sports related thing or military related thing, or whatever the case may be, if it requires a high degree of performance and focus, you probably know what it's like to be in the zone. And the fact that you figured out how to like induce the zone, consciously induce it. Like that's just, to me, that's like, it's game changing. Clearly you're talking about the pirates and stuff, right?
Well, it is. And that's the problem, because it's a paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people either don't know about it or don't believe that you can change this.
Yeah.
One of the people in our program said to me, "I never knew you could change your brainwaves."
I mean, I wouldn't know that.
But you can change it. You can change all kinds of things. I've had patients who've had tumors, and once they go into a deep alpha state, the tumors start to disappear. We do it with imagery, but nevertheless, that's the way God made the body, that we could heal ourselves in many different ways, many different levels. But we all have that ability, and it's just getting that potential to come out into the real world.
Mm-hmm. What would it take for you to get over the hump? Like, so you said you're looking for funding. Yeah.
You want me to give you numbers?
No. I'm not looking for that. But I'm just trying to. So, I mean, you say you have a hard time getting people to understand it on the financial side.
I'm looking for an investor or someone who has a company or someone who would like to license it to help me get to the next stages.
Got it. So it seemed to me like this would be this. When I'm thinking of like, what do they call it? When I'm thinking of what vertical to place this in.
Okay, so there's another vertical market I did mention, and that is one of the new hot topics, which is augmented reality.
Oh, sure, AR.
Because people want to get the most out of their sensory experiences. And if you're in the zone, you can do that. If you're not in the zone, no matter how good the technology is, it's not going to be the same.
AR is a great vertical there. Sports, elite performance stuff, medical devices.
Learning.
Right? Learning.
Health, vision.
Yep. So all you angels and VCs out there that are focused in medical devices, sports performance, AR, definitely check into this a little bit more. Where can they find your information?
My website is accomotrack.com. ACCOMMOTRAC.com.
Sweet. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. Anything else you want to talk about, or
No, just thank you for the interview, and once again, thank you for helping with the videos that are on the YouTube channel.
Of course, man. No sweat. Appreciate our conversation today. Let's get at it. Joe Trachtman, everyone.
You've been listening to Half the City with Brian Shinborn, presented by 8B Media. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your friends, and leave a solid 5-star review to ensure these stories get spread far and wide. For more information, as well as to listen to other shows, including Relentless, a survivor's search for passion, purpose, and inner peace, and Beyond Relentless, be sure to check out 8bmedia.com. Thank you for listening.